Hi, I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm Jasmine with the Alliance for Quality Education. I do want to say we are excited to be here, but deeply concerned about posing a question around editing or fixing or tweaking the foundation aid formula. What we find is that when it comes to issues for Black and brown students, we often want to tinker around the issue, we want to go around the edges of the issue instead of directly addressing the heart of the issue. And the heart of the issue with foundation aid is that it has not been fully funded in over a decade. And this is deeply a racial justice issue. 69% of the foundation aid that is owed to high-need districts. 2/3 of it is owed to districts that are majority Black and brown students in those school districts. The majority of foundation aid is actually owed to just 25 school districts in New York State, where we have over 700 school districts. The money is primarily owed to New York City, Rochester, Brentwood, and Long Island, which we know is a majority students of color, Schenectady, which is mentioned is still a part of the open lawsuits, as well as has an open federal civil rights complaint against New York State. So we know that this is a racial justice issue. Too often when we're talking about numbers, we get lost in the clouds and we talk about the numbers overall, but this is a real impact on students and students in New York State specifically. Just last year, earlier this year, AQE partnered with Senator Robert Jackson and we did a statewide school tour. We toured about 10 districts across New York State, from big cities to small cities to even rural districts like Ellenville. And we toured about 15 schools within New York City. And what we found is deeply appalling, that when we don't fund our schools, our children are the ones who pay the price. When we toured our schools, we found that many schools lacked science lab. They had out-of-date equipment. One school reported using paper labs only because that's all they could afford to do. Another school reported only using labs where the teacher performed the experiments and the students could watch because they can only afford one lab kit. We had one school who reported they did not have a science teacher at all. They did not have a science teacher at all. So this leaves students at a disadvantage when it comes to state tests and when it comes to college admissions. We know that schools in New York have technology, computers, and software that is a decade old. We went to one school where the students were using Windows 97. Most school districts reported that there was not enough funding to maintain or repair devices or to purchase up-to-date equipment. So we know we're not preparing our kids for the 21st century. Many schools don't have a librarian, and when they did have a librarian, they were likely to share that one librarian amongst several schools. We know that this means students are missing out on the opportunity to do research and media skills. Class sizes across New York State are too large. We have elementary students sitting in classrooms with 32 children. This is a shame that New York State is not prioritizing our schools. Too often we're asked to talk about creative ways of dividing a pie that is way too small. The education pie is way too small. Like NYS had said and others have said today, we need to aggressively, fully fund the foundation aid formula, and a 2-year phase-in is more than generous over the formula that's been owed over 10 years, and our students are continually paying the price. We live in a wealthy state, and budgets are about priorities. We often heard that in the budget process, we know that the governor has outsized weight in the process, but you are state senators, you have an equal branch of government partner in the assembly, and you have a voice, you have a bully pulpit, and you do have power, and we hope that you would use it to its fullest extent to hold the governor accountable and call him out for maintaining systemic racism in education funding. And when we were asked, well, who will be with us in Albany? AQE will be with you in Albany, and not just on one day, we will be there on plenty of days. And if you want to help organize buses from your community to come to Albany, we will work with you to do that too. So too often, Black children, Latinx children, and immigrant children, and children from low-income communities are the ones left with limited opportunities and underfunded schools. It is time to reverse the decades of inequity and get back on track to fully funding the foundation aid formula. And once the formula has been fully funded, then we can discuss better ways to improve the formula. It's encouraging to hear progressive leaders at the national stage talk about a wealth tax and corporate greed tax. It's time for New York's progressive leaders to increase revenue in the state budget through progressive taxation. The best economic development plan is to invest in our children. Yet they are the future of New York State. Ensuring that all children have access to a high-quality public education, regardless of income, zip code, and immigration status, must be the top priority of all state leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I have a quick question for David. So the one thing that I found, by the way, thank you for your testimony. All right, anyway, so David, you mentioned in your testimony that many wealthy districts